Welcome back, everyone. Next, we have NeuroMetrix. It trades on the NASDAQ under the symbol NURO and is a commercial stage healthcare company that develops and commercializes neurotechnology devices to address unmet needs in the chronic pain and diabetes markets. The company has two commercial brands. Quell is a wearable neuromodulation platform, and DPN Check is a point of care screening test for peripheral neuropathy. Please, I'm happy to introduce Dr. Shai Gozani, Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of NeuroMetrix. Nice to see you, Doctor. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Anna.
All right. The floor is yours.
Super. Thank you so much. Well, thank you very much, Anna and team, for inviting us to present today. And we look forward to updating you on where NeuroMetrix is and where we're going. I'll start with the traditional forward-looking statements disclaimer, and I would just refer everyone to our most recently filed 10K and subsequent 10Qs for additional information and clarification of risk factors. So NeuroMetrix is a Boston-based medical device company, and our core mission is straightforward. It's to improve the lives of patients who are living with chronic pain, and we do that through neuromodulation devices. Take it a little deeper, we focus on intractable chronic pain, or chronic pain that is very difficult to manage. In particular, those forms of chronic pain that are underserved by current pharmacological options and are also not really suitable for implantable devices. As you'll see, our devices are non-invasive wearables. And our mission even goes beyond the management of chronic pain to also include the assessment of neurological conditions, in particular peripheral neuropathies, and we'll also talk about that. So the investment thesis for NeuroMetrix is really pretty straightforward. We think we're really well positioned based on recent achievements on the clinical and regulatory side to enter a period of sustained growth. And to go a little deeper, we've developed a advanced proprietary neuromodulation platform called Quell, which I'll spend most of the time today talking about. And evidence of its innovative nature and its importance can be found in the fact that we've already received 2 FDA breakthrough designations for this technology, one for fibromyalgia and the other for chemotherapy-induced peripheral neuropathy, or CIPN. We've launched Quell into the U.S. fibromyalgia market, and that will be a core part of what I present today. But beyond fibromyalgia, we have a pipeline of indications that will further expand the market. We also have a neurodiagnostic platform, as well as legacy products that are generating positive cash flow for the company and help fund the growth of our neuromodulation business. And our balance sheet is very clean. We have a strong cash position that will fund our immediate growth needs. We have no debt, and the capital structure is very straightforward with just common shares. So starting out with Quell, this is a device that electrically stimulates peripheral nerves, both superficial nerves as well as deep nerves, in the upper calf region, as you can see in the image. And it's really the first and only wearable neuromodulation device that provides high-dose neurostimulation. And by high dose here, we mean that the number of hours of stimulation that the patient can achieve on a daily basis. So Quell, as a wearable, can achieve 4 to 8 hours per day, which is considerably more than any other comparable device. And in fact, it can even be used at night to extend the treatment further. And what we believe it's doing, and I'll say the mechanisms of action for how devices like Quell work are still being uncovered. But we do believe that one of the core mechanisms is that consistent, persistent stimulation of peripheral nerves, such as by Quell, will reduce the propensity of patients to be hypersensitive to pain. This is also called central sensitization. And really what it appears to be doing is tapping down the tendency of the brain, more broadly the central nervous system, to over-amplify pain signals. And we'll talk about this. You'll see that that's a very important component, often the sole component, such as in fibromyalgia, or a contributing component to many forms of chronic pain. This is highly proprietary technology that's protected by 26 U.S. utility patents. We believe that Quell has broad application, really built on the fact that it appears to have this benefit to reducing this pain hypersensitivity, which, as I said, is a prominent feature of many forms of chronic pain, particularly the intractable forms. Our most advanced program, which is now commercial, is for fibromyalgia. And I'll talk a great deal about that in the coming slides. Our next program behind that is for what's called chronic chemotherapy-induced peripheral neuropathy, or CIPN, which is a common complication of chemotherapy. That is in the development stage, but is currently in preparation for regulatory filing. And behind that, we have additional indications, which I won't go into further detail today, but you can see them listed there. And they represent, again, a significant potential expansion beyond fibromyalgia and even beyond the CIPN opportunities. So we see a long stream of expanded indications and growth in our addressable market. And as you'll see later on, when we get to our commercial strategy, these additional indications really fall into our commercial channels. So starting with fibromyalgia, I'm sure most of you have heard of this condition or may know somebody with it. It's a really debilitating disease. It's characterized by pain throughout the body and tenderness. And as you can see, there's that butterfly in the middle of that image. And the butterfly is the kind of the logo of the fibromyalgia community. And the reason for that is that even a butterfly landing on somebody's skin with fibromyalgia is painful. So that's kind of the visual I would ask you to take back. But even beyond the pain, these patients have many other symptoms that are equally disturbing. And that includes severe fatigue, poor sleep, cognitive problems such as memory loss and difficulty concentrating, often called brain fog, which may sound familiar because it's also part of long COVID. Mood disorders such as anxiety and depression, and an overall very low quality of life. You may be surprised to find out that the prevalence of this condition is quite high. By survey instruments, about 6% of the U.S. population, or 50 million people, about 2%, or about 1/3 of this group, is actually diagnosed, and among those, most are women. There are few treatment options. 3 FDA-approved drugs, none since 2010. And they go by, the drugs are pregabalin, duloxetine, and milnacipran. You may be familiar with Lyrica and Cymbalta, which were the branded versions of 2 of those that are now are generic. They have limited efficacy and some significant side effects to a lot of patients. So this slide shows some of the data that ultimately led the FDA to authorize the use of Quell for fibromyalgia. This is data that was obtained in a double-blind, randomized, sham-controlled clinical trial. And what you see here are the results for patients that were on, or study subjects that were on the active treatment, which was a Quell device, versus a sham Quell device, which stimulated, but at a much lower level than the active device. And what you can see for symptoms, for pain, and for overall quality of life, that considerably more patients obtained clinically meaningful benefits on the active device, that's shown in the dark blue, compared to the sham device in light blue. And these were all statistically significant. The data here is shown for the subset of fibromyalgia patients that have particularly high pain sensitivity, and that is the subgroup for which the FDA granted us authorization, and that can represent typically up to about 70% of the overall fibromyalgia population. So here we show really how we market Quell and what the benefits are to patients and physicians. This is a prescription device, so it's prescribed by physicians for their patients. And I want to allude to a few things here. First, very importantly, the FDA authorized Quell to treat the symptoms of fibromyalgia, not just the pain. So as I mentioned earlier, there's really a broad profile of symptoms, and we can promote Quell for the symptom complex, not just for pain. And that's very important to both patients and physicians. This is a drug-free really almost side effect free intervention. And even the side effects that can occur, such as minor skin irritation from wearing the device for prolonged periods of time, are quite mild and self limiting. And this is highly convenient and very personalized therapy. So patients can use it as they need it. The most common would be to place it on in the morning, take it off in the evening. It's fully automated. So really the patient doesn't have to do anything during the day, as the device automatically turns on and off to properly stimulate the nerves, adjust to what the patient is doing in terms of whether they're active. If they use it while they're sleeping, it automatically adjusts to ensure that it doesn't disturb sleep and so forth. So in terms of how we commercialize Quell fibromyalgia, and I just want to remind you that these channels are suitable for the additional indications. So as we add new indications, they'll leverage this existing strategy. The most important is our direct physician sales force. We also have a direct-to-patient telehealth option that we're developing. And we also see eventually adding some partnerships as well as international distribution. On the direct-to-physician side, we have a field sales force that now consists of a national sales manager as well as 2 regional business managers. And together that they give us coverage of the Florida, Texas, and California markets, And their role is to directly call on physician offices to educate them about the physicians that see patients with fibromyalgia, to educate them about Quell, what Quell can do for their patients, and then to support them as they increasingly prescribe Quell for their patients. The early evidence is that this is very well received by physicians that are seeing these patients. As I said, we have sort of 3 field personnel at this time. Our next, and that was instituted really this quarter, and we see our next expansion decision happening in the first half of next year, probably in the second quarter. We are developing, as I mentioned, a telehealth capability that will give patients an immediate access to Quell via a visit with a telehealth provider, and we're putting that in place in the fourth quarter of this year. We expect it to be contributory next year. And as I said, we'll also look at partnerships and international distribution in subsequent years to fill out our channels. Currently, Quell is available exclusively on a cash pay basis. And while we are looking at certain pockets of third-party reimbursement, we believe that providing patients and physicians with a transparent, cost-effective model where they can access the technology quickly and without intervention from bureaucrats is the most effective way to make Quell available and to grow it at this point. The model is really quite simple. The first month of prescription is $75 to the patient, and for that they get the device as well as 1 month of consumables. And every subsequent month is $50, but that's packaged in 3-month combos, so it's $150 for every 3 months. So to the patient, it's $600 a year for being on therapy, and of course that's the same revenue we obtain per patient. I will say these price points are early decisions. They may get modified over time as we gain more experience, but the reaction from both physicians and patients has been quite positive to this model, and we believe is going to be quite effective in growing the business. This slide shows some of our initial operating metrics that we're reporting for this business, and we'll kind of walk through those, and we'll be reporting these over the next several quarters, and then as we get deeper into the business, we'll probably add additional metrics. What you can see is in the first, on the leftmost graph, you have the number of unique prescribers per quarter. We had 123 in the second quarter. Then moving rightward, we have the cumulative number of prescriptions that have been written. So about 500 prescriptions have been written as of the end of the second quarter. About 60% of those, around 300, have been filled, which is a pretty good fill rate. We'd like to see that go up a bit, and we believe we can get that closer to probably 70%, but we're pleased where that stands right now. And then the final graph shows a cumulative number of months of refill. So about 350 refill months have already been filled by patients. And of course, that's going to be the most important long-term indicator for growth of this business. So just to move on a little bit beyond fibromyalgia and give you a peek about what's coming next. As I mentioned, CIPN, chemotherapy-induced peripheral neuropathy, is our next program. Everybody is familiar with chemotherapy. What you may not know is that about 30% of the 1 million annual patients that are on chemotherapy will develop chronic nerve damage. There are no approved treatments for this. This chemotherapy-induced peripheral neuropathy will significantly reduce quality of life and, in fact, impacts survival, reduces survival. So there's tremendous interest and need in providing more and more patients who are surviving cancer and are living and looking for quality of life with a technology that allows them to improve their overall health. And that is where we see Quell CIPN fitting in. Just a little bit of some of the data. There's a lot more data behind this. Not all of it's been published, so we cannot share it, but here's some data that has been published. So this was a fairly large double-blind randomized sham control trial of Quell in patients that were 3 months out from chemotherapy who did develop a CIPN. And as you can see, for these common symptoms of CIPN, such as hot burning pain, which is called neuropathic pain, sharp stabbing pain, also a form of neuropathic pain, or severe muscle cramps, that Quell, the active Quell, reduced these levels by about 50% compared to the sham, which is around 30%. So this is very exciting work that is driving our regulatory submission to the FDA, which is currently in preparation. We expect to file that in the fourth quarter. And if everything falls into place, we can envision, if we do receive regulatory authorization, launching this in the second half of 2024. So just to switch gears a little bit here, what I've been speaking about to this point is our neuromodulation business. We do also have a very exciting and important neurodiagnostic business, which complements our neuromodulation business. And this is primarily represented by our DPNCheck product, which is shown there. And what DPNCheck is a point-of-care test for peripheral nerve damage. So this is deterioration of the nerves, mostly in the feet and the lower legs, caused by a variety of conditions such as diabetes, such as CIPN. DPNCheck is the only rapid, accurate test for this condition that is available at the point of care. It has been widely used for the past 10 years. About 2 million patients have been tested. And primarily, it's been marketed into what's called value-based care settings, such as Medicare Advantage, and was a nice growing business for us. For us, unfortunately, and for many other companies and medical groups in the Medicare Advantage space, CMS implemented some rather dramatic changes in the way screenings are compensated earlier this year. And so the whole industry is scrambling, including NeuroMetrix, to figure out how to proceed. So that's causing a softening of sales as we navigate this uncertainty. However, we maintain tremendous optimism about this business and believe that we can shift our strategy to find complementary and sort of alternative approaches to growing the business. And I will touch on that a little bit. But we have tremendous confidence in this business and believe it will continue to be a nice complementary business to our neuromodulation efforts. We also do have an international effort with DPNCheck. We have strong, consistent sales in both China and Japan. So in terms of where we are with revenue, what you can see here is that we've been running around $7.5 to $8 million, top line around $5.5 to $6 million in gross margin, which translates to about a 70% gross margin rate for the past several years. You can see that that's softened a bit here in the first half of 2023, and that derives directly from the softening of the DPNCheck business due to the changes that are occurring in Medicare Advantage. Behind these numbers, there's a number of things going on. So first of all, most of the revenue has been generated by DPN check. There's no material contribution yet from Quell Fibromyalgia. We will see that start to occur in the fourth quarter, and we think it will be significantly contributory in 2024. What is also not apparent here is that we have a number of legacy businesses that we manage purely for cash flow with no marketing investment, and those are naturally decreasing with time. So that also puts a bit of a damper on the overall revenue, but do generate cash for the business. So our hope is that we can stabilize the DPN check business with a shift in strategy, as I alluded to, and we'll start to see growth in the neuromodulation business in 2024. So we hope that 2024 should return us to growth. We have obviously a lot of work to achieve that, but that is our plan. On the balance sheet, it's very strong, very clean. We have about $20 million in cash and cash equivalents as of the end of the second quarter. We carry no debt. Our operating cash usage was around $5.5 million last year. It's been about $2.5 million through the first half of this year. We do expect that to increase somewhat to fund our growth initiatives, but we are keeping a very close eye on our overall cash usage, but we are prioritizing growth. And as I said, we would like to return to growth in 2024. Our capital structure is very straightforward. It's constructed entirely of common shares. We have no preferred and no warrants, and about 8.3 million total outstanding shares. In terms of how we're going to build shareholder value over the next year and a half, really 5 initiatives. Clearly, to grow the Quell Fibromyalgia business, leveraging what we've learned here in the first 6 months of our strategic launch, to expand the business in the addressable market, first through CIPN, then through our next program in chronic low back pain, improve our cash flow position by diversifying DPN check beyond Medicare Advantage to address this softening in that sector due to the CMS changes. And finally, to really increase the visibility on NeuroMetrix, what we're accomplishing and will accomplish in the neuromodulation business amongst the investor community. So that will be something that management will be investing significant time over the next year plus. And that brings me to the conclusion of my prepared remarks, and be delighted to take questions from the audience at this point.
Great job. Yes, we do have some questions. Let's talk a little bit more about Quell and your commercial strategy. You're now seeing positive results in marketing to physicians who treat patients with fibromyalgia. So how and when do you expect to expand that strategy to marketing directly to the patients?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I alluded to this. So we are starting this quarter and ramping up in the fourth quarter and into 2024. We'll increasingly doing direct-to-patient education, both to drive patients into their physician office to ask about Quell, but also to look for Quell directly via our telehealth platform that we'll be establishing in Q4. So look for those initiatives to start to be in place in Q4 and to become more contributory and meaningful in 2024.
Perfect. And so chemotherapy-induced neuropathy sounds like a very compelling opportunity, particularly given that there are no FDA-approved treatments. How is that possible? And what's your pathway to addressing CIPN?
Yes, it's a huge unmet need, and there are no approved treatments despite many attempts. So as I said, we have good data. It's a very difficult condition to treat. We are optimistic that the FDA will look favorably on what we have. We will be submitting a 510(k) to the FDA in the fourth quarter. We would look for up to about a 6-month review period for that. So potentially, if successful, we could be on the market in the second half of next year with an option for CIPN, and we are very excited by that and have received very positive feedback from oncologists about having availability of such an option for their patients.
Perfect. And you commented on adverse changes in the Medicare Advantage market. So do you anticipate any positive developments in the near future to benefit healthcare providers, maybe to broaden patient screening and health assessment?
So this is referring, thank you. This is referring to the DPN check business, our neurodiagnostic business. What we're doing is we're not sitting pat. We're trying to figure out how to grow this business. So the first thing we've done is we've really tried to improve the technology. We recently released a second generation of DPN check, which is much easier and faster and easier to learn for the technicians or the medical assistants that utilize it in the office. So we save time and cost that way. We've focused on interoperability, so the data flows seamlessly into electronic health records. That makes the data more valuable. And we've been seeing a significant amount of clinical work showing the broad benefits of DPN check testing, particularly in diabetes, to the physicians and to the patients. So it allows us to make the case to the payers, to the medical providers, that irrespective of changes in the way screening is compensated, that this is useful and will ultimately benefit patients clinically and will save costs downstream. But we're in the midst of really formulating that message and getting it across, so it's going to take a little bit of time.
And William Church wants to know, how does AI affect the Quell model?
Well, we, like every company these days, we're looking at artificial intelligence and probably, I would say more specifically, machine learning as technologies that we can leverage to strengthen our products and our offering. We have very rich data sets because our devices are cloud connected, so we collect a lot of data on patients, and we can use that data in a de-identified way through machine learning techniques to improve the technology. So it's really, I would say, more behind the scenes technique for improving the clinical benefits, but we're always looking at that as amongst our other engineering initiatives.
And another question about Quell. Connor wants to know, has there been a reduction in the consistency or severity of the symptoms after using Quell for some time?
Yes, thank you for the question. So really, that's what the data is showing. So if you recall, on that figure that was after 3 months, and we have this more anecdotal data beyond that patients are experiencing considerably fewer symptoms, both pain as well as other symptoms, and even overall improved quality of life. So yes, now we do not have formal clinical trials looking at, say, 6 months out, 12 months out, 2 years out. We will collect that. But yes, there's very encouraging evidence of improved symptoms and even more importantly, really improved quality of life.
And Brody Ward asks, is NeuroMetrix the only company with a device like this? And if not, can you discuss who the competition is and how will you win their customers?
So I assume thank you. I think the question is related to Quell fibromyalgia. We are the only. It's a very unique platform, as I described earlier, in terms of being truly wearable and being able to deliver consistently high dose of electrical stimulation in a non-invasive format. There is no other device that can accomplish that. We have, as I said, a very strong IP position to protect that. We are only device that the FDA has authorized for fibromyalgia of any sort. So we have a strong IP and regulatory position and first mover advantage. But I think to the question, you have to continue to innovate. And so we continue to invest in moving the technology forward, and both from the product development perspective and from the clinical perspective to further strengthen our position.
And Jay Glenn says, you mentioned consumables. So how is that incorporated, and is that a separate product?
Again, probably referring to the Quell business. So there's the device, and there's a electrode which is used for 2 weeks. So it comes in a two pack, so it's a 1 month supply. So there are two different elements of the product. The first month, the patient gets the device plus 1 month of electrodes, and then the consumable, they reorder only the consumable subsequently in 90-day packages. They're separate. The device and the electrodes are separate, but they're all part of the Quell fibromyalgia brand.
Perfect. And last question from Dakota Harmon. Can you discuss your revenues for the prior 3 and 3 months, respectively? Dakota says they might have dropped off. So, what was that attributed to? And how do you get back to previous levels?
So they've dropped off, as I said, because of these changes in Medicare Advantage. Medicare Advantage being the capitated component of Medicare, where we were particularly focused with our DPN check business. So for the last several years, the primary contributor to our revenue and our growth was this neurodiagnostic business. We have not yet benefited from the neuromodulation business. So the softening is purely because of the governmental policy changes. As I said, we have, we understand that. We're trying to diversify that diagnostic business to stabilize it and get it back to growth. But ultimately, the near-term growth and significant growth driver will be the neuromodulation business, first with qual fibromyalgia and then CIPN. And we expect that to start to kick in the fourth quarter, but particularly next year.
Doctor, do you have any closing remarks for us today?
No, thank you very much for the opportunity. Excellent questions. We look forward to have any further conversations, dialogue with investors. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. We hope that you come back in the near future with some updates. Okay, everyone, stay with us. We'll be back at noon with St. John. So we'll see you very shortly.